The winner stands alone. It's the shimmering world of the Cannes Film Festival, where the rich and famous come together, dazzling the world with their glamour and success. Amidst all of this, one man is on a dark mission. The sun had barely risen when Igor Malev set foot in Cannes, blending seamlessly into the world of opulence and ambitions. Dressed impeccably, with an air of quiet confidence, he could have been mistaken for any other billionaire attending the film festival. But he was here for a different reason. He was here to destroy worlds. Igor's world had already crumbled when his wife Eva, the woman he loved more than anything, had left him for another man, an up-and-coming fashion designer from Middle East named Hamid Hosseini. But Igor wasn't the kind to accept defeat. He used to be in the Soviet army after all. Igor had sent Eva a message. I will destroy universes to get you back. She might have thought it was a metaphor. It wasn't. He was convinced that love was not something one simply lost. It was something to be reclaimed. And if he had to take lives to get his love back, so be it. Igor moved like a shadow among the stars and socialites, carrying out his plan with chilling precision. He believed in a twisted kind of justice, the idea that true love required sacrifice. And so he began to send his messages to Eva through taking lives of random people in Cannes. Each life he took, each carefully staged crime, was his way of sending a message to Eva, who was also in Cannes, proving that he was willing to take apart this seemingly perfect world in Cannes for her. As the day unfolded, the film festival buzzed with its usual distractions: flashes of cameras, clinking champagne glasses, actors, directors, and hopeful dreamers chasing their ambitions, hoping to be seen or discovered. Among them was Gabriela, a young actress on the verge of a breakthrough. Gabriela stared at her reflection in the mirror, adjusting her dress. She had just received a call back from an audition she did in Cannes. This was her moment, the moment she had worked for ever since she had left her small town behind. At 25, she was already being told she was too old, that the industry had younger, fresher faces waiting to replace her. A single role, one successful audition, could change her fate. She had talent, but talent alone didn't open doors in Cannes. Men with power did. And today she was supposed to meet one such man, Hamid Hosseini, who was trying to expand his business into the movie industry as well. With the help from a well-known director and a male superstar, he wanted to announce his new movie at Cannes. Gabriela was chosen for the female role. As she stepped onto the red carpet, having her dream come true, she didn't yet know that fate had already intervened. The director and the superstar of her movie were chosen by Igor as one of his victims, a life taken as a message to Eva, a message that had nothing to do with Gabriela, but had in an instant rewritten her future. In this story, we also have Jasmine, an African model on the brink of a successful career. Jasmine does not abandon her values and is not motivated by the glamour surrounding her, but she realizes her career was at a dangerous crossroad. To continue working with the agent who had initially discovered her and whom she had a romantic relationship with, or to leave her behind and go work with big names. Her agent had arranged a meeting with Hamid Hosseini, the fashion tycoon, knowing that he could easily expand Jasmine's career. and that would mean the end of their collaboration. Jasmine arrived at the luxurious gala where Hamid and his wife Eva were supposed to be, but something felt off. The energy in the air was strange, unsettled. Unbeknownst to her, Igor was here too, moving through the crowd like a ghost, waiting for a chance to see Eva. Hamid had built his empire with nothing. He had worked harder than anyone, outmaneuvered ruthless businessmen, and conquered the world of fashion. But despite all his success, he still feared losing everything. He had sensed something was wrong with his wife today, a shadow hanging over his perfect life. Eva was his greatest treasure, but he knew she had a past, and that past had a name: Igor. Eva had once loved Igor, or at least she had believed she had. But love with Igor had been suffocating, an obsession disguised as devotion. And it wasn't just that. Eva had realized that Igor was violent, and she was quite sure that he murdered at least one innocent man, a drunken beggar who had done nothing but interrupt their dinner at a restaurant. When Eva met Hamid, she saw a different kind of love, the kind that allowed her to breathe. Hamid was her salvation, escape from the trap of her marriage with Igor. But she knew what Igor was capable of. And when she saw the news of murders on the day of the festival and received a message from an unknown number, she recognized the pattern of destruction. She knew he was here. She knew he had come for her. That night, as the festival reached its peak, all these characters with their intertwining fates were at the same gala. Eva, Hamid, and Igor finally came face to face. The man who had sworn to destroy universes for her stood before her and Hamid. And what do you think Igor did? Well, without giving away too many details, the red carpet that had welcomed Hamid Hosseini's dreams became the stage for his downfall. The world of glamour, which had seemed so powerful, proved fragile under the weight of real consequences. Igor had fought to prove that love was the only thing worth killing for, but he had only shown that love, when twisted into obsession, is a sure path to ruin. Obsession is never the same as devotion. This was my summary of the book The Winner Stands Alone, a novel by Paulo Coelho that takes place over 24 hours at Cannes Film Festival. From the glamorous world of fashion to the dark underbelly of human nature, The Winner Stands Alone is a journey that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about the world of celebrities. I think anyone who's chasing fame or wants to become a celebrity should read this novel. This book, with its dark, reflective tone, waves a deep narrative about the illusion of fame, the cost of success, and the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of a glamorous world. It shows how the quest for something unattainable can lead to devastating consequences. You can also find a lot of information about the entertainment business in this book, from behind the scenes of the lives of famous actors to the story about diamonds and how many lives have been lost for us to have these beautiful, shiny objects in our hands. In the end, the question that lingers is whether anyone truly wins in this game. And now I'm going to read to you directly from the book my favorite parts. One of the characters, who's a book distributor, has an interesting written list of what it means to be normal. Let's see how many of these applies to us. Let's see how normal we are according to this list. It's a long list, but it's very interesting. He turns to his friends. What does being normal mean? One of the friends looks bewildered. The other keeps surveying the tent, watching people come and go. Living like someone who lacks all ambition, the first friend says at last. Javid takes his list out of his pocket and puts it on the table. I always have this with me, and I add to it all the time. The friend says that he can't look at it now because he has to keep alert to what's going on around them. The other man, though, more relaxed and confident, reads the list out loud. Normal is anything that makes us forget who we are and what we want. That way, we can work in order to produce, reproduce, and earn money. Spending years studying at university only to find out at the end of it all that you're unemployable. Working from 9 till 5 every day at something that gives you no pleasure at all just so that after 30 years you can retire. Retiring and discovering that you no longer have enough energy to enjoy life and dying a few years later of sheer boredom. Using Botox, believing that power is much more important than money and that money is much more important than happiness, making fun of anyone who seeks happiness rather than money and accusing them of lacking ambition, comparing objects like cars, houses, clothes, and defining life according to those comparisons instead of trying to discover the real reason for being alive. Never talking to strangers, saying nasty things about the neighbors, believing that your parents are always right, getting married, having children, and staying together long after all love has died, saying that it's for the good of the children, who are apparently deaf to the constant rose, criticizing anyone who tries to be different, waking up each morning to a hysterical alarm clock on the bedside table, believing absolutely everything that appears in print or on the screen, wearing a scrap of colored cloth around your neck, even though it serves no useful purpose but which answers to the name of tie, never asking a direct question, even though the other person can guess what it is you want to know, keeping a smile on your lips even when you're on the verge of tears, feeling sorry for those who show their feelings, believing that art is either worth a fortune or worth nothing at all, despising anything that was easy to achieve because no sacrifice was involved. It obviously isn't worth having, following fashion trends, however ridiculous or uncomfortable, believing that all famous people have tons of money saved up, investing a lot of time and money in external beauty and caring little about inner beauty, using every means possible to show that although you're just an ordinary human being, you're far above other mortals, never looking anyone in the eye when you're traveling on public transport, in case it's interpreted as a sign you're trying to get off with them, standing facing the door in an elevator and pretending you're the only person there, regardless of how crowded it is, never laughing too loudly in a restaurant, however good the joke. In the Northern Hemisphere, always dressing according to the season, bare arms in the spring, however cold it is, and woolen jacket in autumn, however hot it is. In the Southern Hemisphere, covering the Christmas tree with fake snow, even though winter has nothing to do with the birth of Christ. Assuming as you grow older that you're the guardian of the world's wisdom, even if you haven't necessarily lived enough to know what's right and wrong. Going to a charity tea party and thinking that you've done your bit toward putting an end to social inequality in the world. Eating 3 times a day, even if you're not hungry. Believing that other people are always better than you, better looking, more capable, richer, more intelligent, and that it's very dangerous to step outside your own limits. So it's best to do nothing. using your car as a weapon and as impenetrable armor, swearing when in heavy traffic, believing that everything your child does wrong is entirely down to the company he or she keeps, marrying the first person who offers you a decent position in society. Love can wait. Always saying, I tried, when you didn't really try at all. Postponing doing the really interesting things in life for later, when you won't have the energy. Avoiding depression with large daily doses of television. The book is old, but I'd say all the streaming services are included. Believing that you can be sure of everything you've achieved. Assuming that women don't like football and that men aren't interested in home decoration and cooking. Blaming the government for all the bad things that happen. Thinking that being a good, decent, respectable person will mean that others will see you as weak, vulnerable, and easy to manipulate. Being equally convinced that aggression and rudeness are synonymous with having a powerful personality. Being afraid of having an endoscopy if you're a man and giving birth if you're a woman. In this part, Igor is thinking to himself how his life path had been, which kind of gives you an idea what kind of a person he is. That was when he understood. It wasn't true that he would give up work next month or next year or even next decade. They would have never the house in the country and the children they dreamed of. He asked himself that night why this was impossible, and he had only one answer. On the road to power, there's no turning back. He would be an eternal slave to the road he'd chosen, and if he did ever realize his dream of abandoning everything, he would plunge immediately into a deep depression. Why was he like that? Was it because of the nightmares he had about the trenches, remembering the frightened young man he'd been then, fulfilling a duty he hadn't chosen, and being forced to kill? Was it because he couldn't forget his first victim, a peasant who had strayed into the line of fire when the Red Army was fighting the Afghan guerrillas? Was it because of the many people who hadn't believed in him and had humiliated him when he was looking for investors for his mobile phone business? Was it because in the beginning he had to associate with shadows, with the Russian mafia, eager to launder the money they earned through prostitution? He managed to repay those questionable loans without himself being corrupted and without owing any favors. He'd managed to negotiate with the shadows and still keep his own light burning. He knew that the war belonged to the distant past and that he would never again set foot on a battlefield. He'd found the love of his life. He was doing the kind of work he'd always wanted to do. He was rich, very rich. And just in case the communist regime were to return tomorrow, he kept most of his personal fortune abroad. He was on good terms with all the political parties. He'd met famous people from around the world. He'd set up a foundation to care for the orphans of those soldiers killed during the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. But it was only when he was sitting on that terraced cafe near Red Square, knowing that he had power and money enough to pay the waiters to work all night if necessary, that he finally understood. He understood because he saw the same thing happening to his wife. Eva was also constantly traveling, and even when she was in Moscow, she would arrive home late and go straight to her computer as soon as she walked in the door. He understood that, contrary to what most people think, total power means total slavery. When you get that far, you don't ever want to give it up. There's always a new mountain to climb. There's always a competitor to be convinced or crushed. Along with 2,000 other people, he formed part of the most exclusive club in the world, which met only once a year in Davos, Switzerland, at the World Economic Forum. All the members were millionaires, and they all worked dawn until late at night, always wanting to go further, never changing tack, acquisitions, stock markets, market trends, money, money, money. They worked not because they needed to, but because they judged themselves to be necessary. They felt that thousands of families depended on them and that they had a huge responsibility to their governments and their associates. They genuinely thought they were helping the world, which might be true, but they had to pay for this with their own lives. Now, this part is a little behind the scene of the lives of a typical woman who wants to be a model. These young models go to any party they're invited to. They behave as if they were much more important than they are, knowing deep down that they would love someone to break through the artificial barrier of ice they create around themselves. They look at older men with a mixture of revulsion and attraction. They know that such men have the necessary money to help them make the big leap, but at the same time, don't want to seem to be nothing but high class whores. They're always seen with a glass of champagne in one hand, but that's just part of the image they want to project. They know that alcohol can affect their weight, and so their preferred drink is a glass of still mineral water because although fizzy water doesn't affect the weight, it has immediate consequences on the shape of the stomach. They have ideas, dreams, dignity, but all these things will vanish one day when they can no longer disguise the early onset of cellulite. They make a secret pact with themselves never to think about the future. They spend much of what they earn on beauty products, promising eternal youth. They adore shoes, but they're so expensive. Nevertheless, they sometimes treat themselves and buy a pair of the very best. They get clothes from friends in the fashion world at half the usual price. They share a small apartment with their parents, a brother who's at university, and a sister who's chosen to be a librarian or a scientist. Everyone assumes the girls must be earning a fortune and frequently ask them for loans, to which the girls agree because they want to appear important, rich, generous, and different from other mortals. When they go to the bank, though, their account is always in the red, and they've overshot their credit limit. They acquire hundreds of business cards, meet well dressed men who make proposals of work they know to be false, but they phone them now and then to keep in touch, conscious that they might need help one day, even though that help comes at a price. They all fall into the same traps. They all dream of easy success, only to realize that it doesn't exist. By 17, they have all suffered innumerable disappointments, betrayals, humiliations, and yet still they believe. They sleep badly because of the various pills they take. They listen to stories about anorexia, the commonest illness in the world, a kind of mental disturbance caused by an obsession with weight and one's physical appearance, and which culminates in the body rejecting all nourishment. They say it won't ever happen to them, but never notice when the first symptoms appear. They step out of childhood straight into a world of glitz and glamour without passing through adolescence. When asked what their plans are for the future, they always have the answer on the tip of their tongue. I'm going to study philosophy. I'm just working to pay for my studies. They know this isn't true. Or rather, they know that something about these words doesn't ring true, but they can't quite put their finger on what it is. Do they really want a degree? Do they really need that money for their studies? They don't have time for college because there's always a casting session in the morning, a photo shoot in the afternoon, a cocktail party before dark, then another party they have to go to in order to be seen, admired, and desired. To other people, they seem to lead a fairy tale existence, and for a while, they too believe that this is the real meaning of life After all, they have almost everything they once envied in the girls who appeared in the magazines and cosmetic ads. With a little discipline, they can even save a little money, until, after a careful daily examination of their skin, they discover the first mark left by age. After that, they know it's only a matter of time before a designer or a photographer notices the same thing. Their days are numbered. The celebrity syndrome. It can destroy careers, marriages, and Christian values, and can blind both the wise and the ignorant. A few examples. Great scientists who, on being given an important prize, abandon the research that might have helped humanity and decide instead to live off lectures that feed both their ego and their bank balance. The Indian in the Amazon jungle who, on being taken up by a famous singer, decides that he's being exploited of his poverty. The campaigner for justice who works hard defending the rights of the less fortunate decides to run for public office, wins the election, and subsequently considers himself above the law, until he's discovered one day in a motel room with a prostitute paid for by the taxpayer. The celebrity syndrome, when people forget who they are and start to believe what other people say about them. The superclass, everyone's dream, a world without shadows or darkness, where yes is the only possible answer to any request. If you have never read anything from Paulo Coelho, The Winner Stands Alone should not be your first book of him, because it's very different from his earlier writing. And to be honest, I liked his earlier writings better. This book didn't receive very positive reviews either, but I still enjoyed reading it, and I would recommend it, especially if you're someone who always thought about becoming famous. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you on the next video.